coming up on episode 64 of Omnivore, unlocking the potential of open innovation and a peek into the insights of a food ethnographer. This is Omnivore from the editors of Food Technology Magazine and the Institute of Food Technologists.
This episode of Omnivore is brought to you by Almond Board of California. Almonds offer endless possibilities for innovation. Learn more by visiting almonds.com/trends.
Welcome to Omnivore from IFT and Food Technology, where we explore the intersection of business, science, and technology in the global food system. I'm Bill McDowell. Open innovation is the practice of collaborating with external partners, such as startups, universities, suppliers, customers, or even competitors, to develop new products, processes, or technologies. Instead of relying solely on internal R&D, companies leverage both internal and external ideas to accelerate innovation, reduce costs, and bring new food products to market more efficiently. This concept is quickly becoming a necessity for tackling some of the food system's most pressing challenges, from climate change to supply chain fragility. Food Technology's Deputy Managing Editor Kelly Hensel recently spoke with Adamek, Director of Innovation and Business Transformation at EIT Food, about how cross-sector collaboration can unlock bold solutions, why startups and corporates need each other, and what it takes to make a shared innovation actually work.
I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about how you define open innovation, in the context of food and agriculture, and why it's so important today.
That's a brilliant question, because for me, open innovation, it's not a concept, and regardless the space, whether it's food, agriculture, whatever, it's a necessity. And why open innovation? It means inviting smart people, technologists, bold ideas, and the process, because innovation is not only creativity, it's a process you need to apply. And open innovation means we invite externals to this process. So even when they come from the outside of the organization, are even much more welcomed. So in food, in agriculture specifically, open innovation means much more than ever, because we are facing so many problems. We are dealing with a global system under pressure, so climate change, biodiversity collapse, malnutrition, supply chain fragility, all of these, and probably some more, which I now don't recall, but no one actor, not a startup, not a corporate, not a government can solve it alone, simply. So open innovation plays a crucial role here. That's why we need to build bridges and not silo bunkers. So the truth is, for me, open innovation is kind of an operating system. It's the operating system for the next generation of food system, simply. So we need to operate somehow to deliver a better food system.
And I know this kind of goes to what you were just saying, that in the article you were quoted as saying that breakthroughs don't happen in isolation. They don't happen in these silos like you were talking about. And so obviously there are these big challenges that we're facing in the food industry. And the more minds that we have in the room, so to speak, the better. Is what makes that cross sector collaboration essential for solving these big challenges?
Yes, we think that innovation happens still in the garage. No, it doesn't. I mean, it may, but it's kind of individual product, individual solution. But when we think system, so I was saying operating system, we need to think bigger, right? So it's not the world where the innovation is linear. It's non-linear, it's messy, it's collaborative, it deals with ambiguity, with kind of misunderstanding, misalignment, and then you build around that. So if not in the garage, so where? In the kitchen, in the lab, in boardrooms, in governmental institutions, everywhere at once. And we need those actors. So let me give you just an example. And there is a UK startup, Better Origin. We supported, and the startup transformed food waste into insect-based animal feed. Brilliant idea, I would say. But they couldn't scale it alone, so they needed the researchers from academic institutions, research organizations, to measure all of the stuff. They needed to validate the nutritional content. They needed farmers to integrate the products into their supply chain. They needed EAT Food to bring them together to co-found the pilot and fast-track the regulatory learning curve. This is another angle. So that's the power of collaboration. If we are not collaborating with someone completely different from you, are you even innovating? That's the question which is coming to my mind often.
It's so interesting because I see this happening on a much smaller scale in organizations themselves, where they get in their silos of their department, their processes, their procedures, and then when they're forced out of those, so many great new ideas emerge. So it's obviously just taking that and obviously blowing it up on a bigger scale.
I believe that people love to innovate. So people are creative. So I think this is where really magic happen among people, when people are creating something from the scratch or from the problem which occurred. So they are kind of bonding together and working on the solutions. And then we see, oh my goodness, it's such a fantastic picture when you see people collaborating.
Yeah,
it's very rare when you see people not collaborating actually at the same table, at the same kitchen lab or whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned a UK startup. I was wondering if you had any other case studies or examples where this kind of open innovation process really created that real world impact that people want to get out of this process.
Well, I will be speaking about my experience with EAT Food, because I could probably spend an hour or so on the past experiences, but the most recent example, the case study or the case itself, is one of our flagship projects named Smart Protein.
Okay.
And this one actually is the really case study, because it showcased the whole open innovation model in action. So we brought together Barilla, the Malthouse Group, Fraunhofer Institute, University College Cork, and several biotech startups. And we asked them to collaborate together. So we worked as a kind of matchmaker. And the goal was to tackle Europe's dependence on imported proteins like soy protein. And instead of creating functional protein ingredients from local food industry byproducts, rather than looking for extensive import. So the science was cutting edge, I would say: fermentation, extrusion, ingredients engineering. So you need to have all of these stakeholders with their expertise, with their experience. And the real collaboration happened just because they were collaborating. So the corporates brought market access, scale. The scientists brought credibility. The startups brought speed and their way of doing things. And EAT Food acted as a bridge, kind of catalytic connector. And the outcome of it, that's why I'm so proud of them, was that a protein ingredient was the result of that collaboration, with up to 85% of lower greenhouse gases emission than soy. So shared patents that were licensed under freemium model, and the products that hit the shelves in the Barilla crackers in 2024. It's not a prototype, it's really what people have in their hands. So let me be clear, no one player could have pulled that off alone. It requires really shared risk, shared infrastructure, shared ambition, and shared dream, or collaboration, I could say.
And obviously there's a lot of positives that can come out of it, but there are obviously hurdles to what these projects face in terms of like intellectual property, goal alignment. How are those navigated successfully?
And I don't like to talk about the hurdles or bottlenecks or anything which stops us, but you are right. I mean, they are real and they exist. So it's this is in the this is the messy middle, I would say.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest with you. I mean, IP and misalignment are two the biggest killers, I would say, to brilliant collaborations. And I would say that great ideas die quietly in legal limbo, if I may call it like this.
Mhm.
On IP, for example, startups fear losing their edge.
Yeah.
Corporates fear getting sued later or something, or they don't want to show their R&D labs. Academics want to publish every single piece of the research. And it's not an easy thing, but I do believe that if you work together and you specify your expectations at the early beginning of your collaboration, it's much easier. I'm not saying it's super easy and always working, but it's much easier. And also on alignment, on the goal alignment, on what we expect. Everyone walks in the room with different definition of success.
Sure.
So what success means to me, it might be different from what success does mean to you. So what I really like to do is kind of design sprints, and we run theory of change approach. So short, structured sessions where every partner agrees on what success looks like, how we measure it, and when to stop, pivot, merge, whatever. So it saves us months of confusion later.
Yeah.
And there is one more thing which we haven't mentioned: procurement. And this is not that procurement is bad; it's actually very good. But if this is applied too early, it may really mess up with everything, because we need to stick to every single rule, and innovation is about breaking them a little bit. And I'm talking about technical rules, conceptual rules, marketing rules, market rules, first of all, consumer rules. So you need to really have this freedom and then find out how they fit into procurement, and really do not allow bureaucracy to kill the innovation. So don't be too early limiting ourselves. So you can have the best minds in the room, but if the process is broken, then the outcome is completely irrelevant. So we need to assure that we have the conditions and everything what is needed to innovate.
One last question for you. For organizations, maybe mid-sized organizations, even larger ones, I guess, that are just starting to explore this open innovation process, this idea, what would be your best advice on how to get started and find the right partners?
I have my own framework for that, and it's not very popular because it's not well known, but I'm just looking at this from this special perspective, which I have developed several years ago. Start small, start smart, and start with purpose. And this last one is absolutely the super important one. If you don't have the purpose, if you don't have the kind of impact in your mind you want to make, then everything is more kind of less clear. And I'm saying start small is because you don't need to make all of the innovations at once. Just little by little, step by step, like baby steps. Start smart. If you fall down, you get up. I mean, if you fall down and you cannot get up, sorry for these metaphors, but then you relay a bit and then you think, all right, what I can do with that.
Yeah.
So frame a problem, fall in love in problems, and really understand the problem from both sides of the coin. Really ask yourself, what transformation are we trying to trigger? What impact we want to achieve? Look around before building from scratch. Maybe something already exists. Maybe there is someone who already know the answers. Pilot fast, fail fast. This is not like one may say cliche. It's like written in the books, fail fast, but it's really the truth is in that. I mean, I spent 25 years in different organizations working on innovations, whether they were academic institutions or industry, startups, my consulting, now EAT Food. I was failing so many times, and I don't regret that. I mean, I'm stronger much more, and you only learn by this. I think what's very important is having kind of a sponsor or broker. It helps a lot. I call it broker because it's someone who connects you with somebody else, someone who connects you with the latest inventions, achievements, publications. Kind of find a neutral one who doesn't have any interest or business in doing so. So EAT Food plays such a role. We really try to reduce the transaction cost, align incentives, build trust, being this independent convener and catalyst. And probably my advice, what to do to really succeed at innovation is, if your innovation, open innovation process looks like procurement from, I don't know, late 90s, don't invite startups. They will run the other way, and they will find a better partner for you. So if you want to work with startups, adapt.
Yeah. That's great advice. And very helpful, I think, for just getting some larger corporations maybe out of their own heads, out of their own way, if you will. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Adam Adamek is Director of Innovation and Business Transformation at EIT Food, where he oversees a €40 million portfolio focused on scaling sustainable food solutions. You can read more about how food and beverage companies are embracing open innovation in the July issue of Food Technology. We'll be back with more Omnivore in a moment, but first, this word from our sponsor.
This episode of Omnivore is brought to you by Almond Board of California. Almonds offer endless possibilities for innovation. To help you stay ahead of the curve, Almond Board partnered with TasteWise, a generative AI platform for modern food and beverage brands to identify trends that will shape the future of snacking and beyond. Get inspired and learn more by visiting almonds.com/trends. Again, that's almonds.com/trends.
Welcome back to Omnivore. I'm Bill McDowell. We've all heard it a million times by now that you are what you eat. Well, sure. But what do our food behaviors really reveal about us? Junjo Lee regularly answers that question for her clients. As a food ethnographer, she's a careful student of consumers' food choices and uses that information to anticipate the kinds of cultural shifts that will shape the marketplace. She recently explained to Food Technology's Mary Ellen Kuhn just how food ethnography works and zeroes in on what she's recently learned about Gen Z consumers in particular.
Hi, Junjo. I've been really looking forward to this conversation because your work seems fascinating, but I don't know much of anything at all about food ethnography.
Yeah, thank you. I've been looking forward to talking with you too. So I am a food ethnographer, and I studied cultural and medical anthropology. And then I started working at this small little boutique market research company called the Hartman Group back in the 2000s. And we were applying anthropology and sociology to consumer research. So demographics and cultural analysis, using ethnography as a qualitative way to capture data. So going in-home, going shopping, riding the minivan with consumers, and deeply listening, which meant always listening to what people were saying for those shared narratives and themes that started emerging, but also for what they weren't saying, and the tensions and contradictions when we were in their homes and what they actually did. And so all of that we would take and do a cultural analysis. So rather than individual psychographics, we were looking at American food culture and how that culture was changing.
So interesting. I'm kind of wondering, do you have to explain your job a lot to people?
That's a great question, because when I say I'm a food ethnographer, people say, "Oh, food photographer," and I think for the last 10 years, I was working with Michael Bacher, and he was at Google leading the food team, and all of of amenities, all the fun stuff that happened inside Google buildings. And so for 10 years, I spent my days and nights interviewing Googlers. And in tech, they were very much used to ethnography and applied ethnography in relationship to user experience research and to human-centered design. And so I just had to quickly, when I started talking to Googlers, say, "Oh, I do UXR," and then they got it. But I think ethnography is becoming more of a hot methodology these days because our world is moving so fast and because it's so complex. I think we all can be ethnographers. We all, I think, need to listen deeply to each other.
So you've worked for a lot of food companies, quite a few. Why do food companies typically hire you?
Yeah. So there's a few times when they need someone like me. One is when they're going into a fresh new territory or dig site, exploring something really new. Another place where I often worked was when smaller companies or mid-sized companies were becoming larger and wanted to reach a more mainstream marketplace and consumer base. Then you had to understand what was important for that new, more broader segment than your core segment who have always been loyal to you. And often the people within a company and the founders, you generate a business based on templating on your values and problems to solve and unmet needs. And then when you're meeting a more broader mainstream consumer, theirs might be very different. And somewhere they meet, but it's helping our clients talk in the language of that consumer and join the consumer journey versus saying, "Hey, consumer, look at me. I'm so good. You need me," right? It's understanding how to speak your consumer language, the consumer language and needs and challenges and opportunities. So I think those are the two best places to apply ethnography.
Okay. Well, I wonder if you could kind of take us through the process, or does the process differ a lot from one time to the next?
No, the process is something that we created at the Hartman Group, and it works really very well. And in fact, I'm in a fieldwork process right this moment. But generally, you can scope out a project to be about 10 weeks long. And it starts with understanding the segmentation pretty well of who you want to talk to. And it could be as broad as Gen Z foodies, right? Or Gen Z foodies who have one child, or it can be very complicated through typing tools. But first, you understand the segments, and then you recruit based on those segments to find the most representative and articulate points of data across the full spectrum. And then we generate a discussion guide and with the client and put all of their questions and things they need to know, but also their assumptions and hypotheses into that discussion guide. So the way that I like to structure a project is to first recruit maybe double of what you actually need, and then online interview them almost as a first recruiting screen, and then select half of those people. Or sometimes you have to just find another person and then do the more intense shop-alongs in homes or whatever in situ that you're trying to understand in the consumer's life, and then do the field work, and then come back and organize the data, clean the data, and then start generating findings, insights, and recommendations. So that's typically how we do it. And then I have another process that I developed while at Google, which is a longitudinal cohort. So, for example, Michael was pretty prescient when he was there and asked me to look into Generation Z, the next generation of Googlers who were coming on board. And at the time, they were still in high school. And so we recruited high school teachers who then introduced us to their high school, most talented high school students who were likely going to go into tech, high-tech careers, and started a longitudinal Gen Z cohort where we would revisit the Gen Zers year after year, sometimes once or twice a year, and just see how they were growing over time and develop a deep, deep relationship with them. So the longitudinal cohort is yet another way that I do research.
That must be interesting, spending that time over an extended period of time with the individuals. But I really want to ask you about Gen Z and what you learned and how they're different from other consumer cohorts.
And so I would say they are unlike any other generation that I've studied before. I've studied boomers and Gen Xers and millennials. In fact, we did a project for Kraft, a huge project for Kraft, where we in some ways discovered the millennials because they weren't buying the same products as their parents. But so Gen Zers are the first digital natives. So one of the first early insights that I found was that digital is actually nourishing for them. I learned that food was not a problem to solve. Food was fun and pleasure and expression and identity creation. And if someone wanted to make a sourdough, they could do it because, YouTube University, TikTok, now AI, they had all the assistance tools out there. So food wasn't a problem to solve for them. It was more a culture of what kind of relationship do I have with food and what kind of relationship do I have through food. And I also saw that cooking was a sign that you were doing well. And also it was a tool to feel better when you weren't, especially cooking for others. I learned that for them, their social infrastructure, their friend groups were more reliable and a source of stability than any other group, such as an employer or, outside of that social friend group infrastructure. They could count on their friends and rely on their friends.
So many follow-up questions. It's really fascinating. I hope you'll tell me a little bit more about Gen Z, but my sister has 3 kids and 2 are millennials and 1 is Gen Z. And she is like, there is a dividing line. They look at the world very, very differently.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they do. I think it's, and generations are just a shorthand to describe a moment in time and life stage and work stage, right? It's just an easy way to talk about it. But I think they are systems thinkers. They've been trained to think in systems from kindergarten. And so they take a whole earth approach as they're thinking. So they are our first generation of meta-moderns. So they're hybrid, fluid, queer by default. They are non-binary, open, very, very open and very experience-based. So really different from people like myself. I'm a Gen Xer and I'm bicultural. I grew up in Korea as well. I was taught there's definitely a right and a wrong, a good and a bad, a good food, bad food. And I think Gen Zs live in the realm of it depends.
So that affects their purchasing behaviors?
Truly, it does. You know, if millennials were in at some period of point, there was a huge plant-based vegan push, right? The vegan. How do you know a vegan? They'll let you know in 4 seconds that they're vegan. I guess Gen Z are yes and both and everything all at once. So they can be plant-based on occasion, but then eat an entirely different style for another. So I think they're just additive, not restrictive, and incremental. And sort of underlying everything is they want to connect. And right now, they want to learn how to care more. And the thing that gets under their skin is sort of these made up separations and divisions between us.
So I'm wondering if that makes all these attributes make marketing and selling to them easier or harder than it is for other generations.
Yeah, different. Just different. I mean, they're really in the moment, trend chasing. You know, when I first started out doing this kind of work in 2005 at the Hartman Group, there were definite trend cycles. And there were even fads under the trend cycles, and they were long sort of cultural trends. We might say health and wellness was a long cultural trend. Premium was a trend. Cronuts became a trend. And then everybody's just trending all the time. So I think what's important is to be in the moment and to be constantly moving and changing and fluid and adaptable. And as one Gen Zer described to me, they're really good at trend chasing. And so it's a different relationship.
Junjo Lee is a food ethnographer who works with companies around the world, helping them better understand their customers. She shares more of her thoughts and insights in an in-depth interview in the July issue of Food Technology.
Thank you to this episode's sponsor, Almond Board of California. Almonds offer endless possibilities for innovation. Get inspired and learn more by visiting almonds.com/trends.
And that wraps up this episode of Omnivore. Thanks again to all our guests and my colleagues at Food Technology. Omnivore is produced and distributed by the Institute of Food Technologists. If you enjoyed today's show and want to learn more about Food Technology Magazine or how to join the conversation by becoming an IFT member, visit ift.org/membership. For more in-depth discussion about innovation in the science of food, check out IFT's other podcast, Side Dish, on the News and Publications page of ift.org. If you have comments or suggestions for future shows, just send us an email. The address is editors@ift.org. For the entire team at Food Technology and IFT, I'm Bill McDowell. Thanks for listening, and join us again for our next episode.